Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Ahead of the Curve. This is our first episode of 2021. Hopefully, it goes a lot smoother than 2020. I'd like to welcome my guests, Caitlin and Devin. Sorry, Devin, just stumbled across your name there from DCBolt. How are you guys doing?
Important one, right?
Yeah, priorities.
Just kidding. We're doing great. It's so great to be here. Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah,
of course. Yeah, it's great having you guys, especially locals. You know, other locals from Florida.
Represent.
For 6 years and counting. 7 years. 7 years and counting now. We're in 2021. So yeah, we're loving every day. You know, this is the time of the year that we like to be down here, right? So.
Yeah, I know. We if only we could just kind of temporarily stay here or be snowbirds and live in Florida for, you know, the winter, fall months, and maybe a little bit of spring, and then like bugger out.
Yeah.
That's the dream. That's what we try to do as closely as we can, whenever we can.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, Christy, thanks for joining us today. Christy takes care of a lot of the marketing and back-end work for me here, so I always like to give her a good shout out and thank her so much for all of the work. So guys, can you give us a little bit of background of what DCBolt is and how you guys kind of started the company and came together?
Sure. Well, I'm going to first off start by saying that Devin and I are partners in life, love, business. So we're actually married. We met in college, actually in Chicago at 3D animation school called Tribeca. And
great school.
Yeah. Great school, great memories, learned a lot there. Devin was actually teaching the teachers when he was there. So he was.
No, I wasn't. Those of you who see this.
No, it's true. But we actually started the company while we were in college. Devin comes from an AV background, which I'm sure he'll touch on. But I come from just kind of fine arts and animation background. We were both there for 3D animation. And we started out really in hospitality, designing nightclubs in Chicago. Such a fun project in college.
I could just imagine. You guys must have had like quite the life back in college.
We were definitely, we were definitely in the chapter of life where that was very much enjoyed and part of. You know, we were in it, and the club owners were looking for the young eye. They were looking for the young techie eye of the next generation. So we were able to kind of step into those shoes, and it's cool. Probably our first legitimate opportunity with a real budget to like buy a bunch of technology that we really didn't know what it did, and then like kind of smash it against the wall and make it work. And it was just a huge learning experience. You know, I had my iPhone and just kind of time lapsed everything and made a video out of that, and like it caught some steam, and we just haven't stopped since. Yeah.
That's pretty wild.
It's funny because actually Devin got started with projection mapping, like, very grassroots style of projection mapping. He actually used the boxes that he used to move into his apartment in Chicago. He painted them white. He put them up against a corner in his bedroom, shined a bunch of projectors at them.
I had one projector.
Yeah, just one, actually.
Leftover kicker projector that I had from like some job that I did before I moved to Chicago. And
right.
Yeah, no, I just saw a cool video of projection mapping on blocks in the corner of a room, and it was done. I think it was like Panasonic at the time. And they turned these blocks into a city, and that blew my mind. And it
was back 2010.
So yeah, I come from a background of standard, traditional, like commercial level audio-visual integration. Where when you're thinking of projectors back in the day, it was either a square, a 4x3, a 16:9, and it was and all your calculations were based off of centering the projector to the screen. It's all about where the lens was, and every pixel had to be perfectly square. And to then kind of break into the digital side of things to realize, you know what, as long as I got pixels kind of covering that thing, like I can do some weird stuff with it. And then, so I ended up mapping the boxes in like straight up Photoshop, like drag Photoshop over projector, traced it out on Photoshop. Our Bad Mapper didn't exist then. There was none of these like, drag and drop mapping softwares out there. So I kind of was like, I think I could figure this out. And came up with a 2-dimensional perspective image of my blocks. And then I dragged that into, at the time I was using Maya. and I made 3D blocks to match my 2D blocks, to match my real-time blocks. And then I started animating, and it was definitely tchotchke, but it worked. Like, people walked in there were blown away. So it was fun.
It was great. And it taught me so much as a beginner animator, animating, creating content for projection mapping. Those blocks were our babies. Like, just, even outside of school, that's what we would be doing. We'd be creating content for this experience where we'd have a bunch of parties, people would come over, we'd all, just take in the sights.
Well, we integrated the blocks into our classroom studies too. So, like, we would have an animation, that we had to do something with physics or particles or something that day. So we would make it, instead of making whatever the classroom assignment was, we would do it for the blocks, and we would make content for these 3-dimensional blocks. And then we would film it and bring it back to the class and say, look at this, we made this in 3D. You saw us working on it yesterday, and here's what it looked like when we projected it onto itself. And they're like, it was kind of just a cool thing. We ended up doing yeah. Like, I remember my animation teachers just being like, that is so cool. Like, and they're getting really excited about it. So
that actually led to Devin creating like the first projection mapping classroom at Tribeca. I think it was the first, ever, but just kind of gearing our studies towards that medium. Like, that was a huge part of how we started the company.
So yeah, Tribeca was awesome. They picked up the ropes and, even built some curriculum around projection mapping and designing content for specific, forced perspective 3D illusions and all that. So it's just kind of been, it's been a fun ride.
Well, I was going to say, that's kind of how it all starts ultimately anyway. Somebody has to sit somewhere in a dark room usually and just kind of work their way through it and take notes, and it's all trial and error. And I think that's kind of like one of the most fun parts about the whole creative process is you're really, throwing a whole bunch of stuff up against the wall and seeing what stays there, what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Yeah, but many fond memories of just getting started out in Chicago and making it all work and figuring things out as
the best part is, when I moved from that apartment, I got to reuse all my boxes.
multi-purpose projection mapped boxes.
Exactly. Everyone should do it.
That's what everyone did for a long time too. You think about all those installations you saw in restaurants and clubs, mostly hospitality, where it was just all blocks. Or you think of Amon Tobin, right?
I love that. That was some of my biggest inspiration was the Amon Tobin show, both version 1.0 and 2.0. And we were front and center in Chicago when they came and played. And we had some professors at the time and people who were in the school. We had like a group of like 30 people show up to the show because they were all like kind of turned on to this projection mapping thing was all, the new rave. And Amon Tobin shows were amazing. Those are great.
Good times.
Missing the live event days for sure.
Big time.
Good times indeed. Yeah. So speaking of live events and things, of course, there was a huge monumental shift back in March, which kind of spurred a whole bunch of things, including the show. Where did you guys end up landing during that time? And I know, Caitlin, you were already talking about, experimenting with some new stuff and getting into some audio work and learning some Ableton.
Big time. Yeah, I love Ableton Live. It's so much fun. And combining it with, real-time rendering and using audio input, that kind of interactive work that's really experimental and fun and experiential. Of course, buzzword, gotta drop that. But that was the biggest thing. I feel like COVID and quarantine, thank God we were healthy and able to, to really move through that time with grace and move through that time and add to our arsenal of skills, really. I feel like the people who were able to use that time to really hone in on new skills, that's like the biggest benefits of that quarantine period, right? So a lot of Ableton Live, a lot of creating music, a lot of interactive Unreal Engine stuff that we were kind of exploring. And the real-time rendering is, really where it's at.
Yeah, so I remember, like everybody, we took a lot of time and whipped the house into shape, did a lot of yard work and, got the garage cleaned and all those projects that you've been putting off for the whole year because we were so busy, finally had, that settling time to kind of just get our life back in order, which was really nice. And I will say that we are blessed as a company that we're structured in such a way that we, we're pretty much built to survive something like a quarantine year. Like so much of our work is done remotely, and so many of our clients and agreements and people that are out there, which we're so thankful to have these partnerships, but those are, they're integrated, installed all over the country, but because we have the internet, we're basically in there, and so we're able to really jump through a lot of the hoops and cut through some of the red tape that quarantine and the COVID, pandemic was presenting to a lot of other companies like us. We're not so much in the live event space as we are in the permanent installation space. So a lot of our installations are designed to live through a time where they can't be serviced for a long time, and they're designed with the tools and the backbone in place that we can tap in and do anything we need to remotely. And so on terms of that, like, we really haven't been impacted directly with existing projects. Existing installations have been solid, but obviously, just like the rest of the industry, everything that we had slotted for the year just kind of went on hold. And some of them are starting to come back, some of them are still on hold, some of them probably won't be coming back, but that's just the industry. And so we just feel super blessed that we were kind of prepared for that, and we had a very great year in 2019 that kind of set us up right to be able to survive and mitigate and take our time to learn new tools and sharpen our tool sets.
Awesome. Yeah, I remember the last time I spoke to you guys were actually running around the country, or running around parts of the country in an RV.
That's right.
That's
yeah. So so like being in the permanent install space, a lot of our projects are 1, 2, 3 year timelines. So even though there was a pandemic going on, even though there was gridlock and quarantine going on, we had commitments as a company to some of our customers and to some of our projects and installations that were happening in other parts of the country. Now, obviously, we couldn't fly there. We couldn't stay in hotels, and Caitlin and I, we go to Burning Man anyway, so we're kind of in the RV road tripping scene.
But we stepped it up.
You guys are part of the club.
And Burning Man was canceled, so we were kind of bumming like that and going to miss our road trip. So
we did a lot of work for Burning Man too. That's what I like to preface. We don't just go there to have fun, although it is a lot of fun, but we actually run the video and audio for a lot of the camps.
Yeah, it's one of the best places on earth to go and be able to express, as a tech nerd, to express and push technology to the utmost crazy boundary. That's what happens in the desert, and that's kind of what we get brought in, and we help contribute to, LED sculptures or video and lighting systems, whatever they may be. But nonetheless, yeah, so we upgraded our RV to something that was a little less Burning Man-esque and more,
We're
more adulting now, but it allows us to travel job to job and have a fully functioning office off the grid. We can have all of our tools for any job or installation with us. We can, manage work remotely as much as we can. So we started this podcast out saying, how we wish we could get out of Florida for those hot months. Well, that's pretty much exactly what we did.
Yeah.
Once it got hot, we went up north and
packed it up. We're out of here.
Yeah, we ran the business from the road, and we were able to handle, go to different job sites and do some face-to-face, mask-covered, of course, work for clients with boots on the ground when we needed to, and it just helped us stay agile.
That's fantastic. I'd actually love to hear from the viewers too. You guys see, have you been transient? Have you guys been moving around during the times? It would be really interesting to hear back from the viewers to see what they've been doing. And last year was really a huge transient year for a lot of people, moving away for other work-wise or just changing professions and changing career. And right. It was definitely a very interesting time to be alive, to say the very least, even over the course of the last few days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's scary at times.
Definitely. But as you said, Devin, it's been a really interesting time to be in this industry. And it's nice to hear that you guys have had a business plan in place to kind of make your way through some of the darker times of a pandemic, because it's really important, I think, to diversify. And I know a lot of people from the live events market, where I'm from natively, have had to kind of reinvent themselves or find new outlets and new means to be able to generate income, right? It's been it's been testing and trying for a lot of people, a lot of companies. But one of the things that I do find that's been interesting and has been beneficial is it's also created a lot of different industries, right? And a lot of different things have come out of real-time rendering and content development and content creation. There's a lot more people that have been getting into it and experimenting with different types of technology and, you know, figuring out what links to what, how things work. So some of the things that I would love to hear from you guys is, you know, some of the evolutions that have come from your kind of natural progression into your company, and maybe some of the work that you guys have been doing, you know, for visualization or for some of your recent projects that have involved some real-time rendering and some use of some of the gaming engines. And hey, Berto, welcome back, my friend.
Hello.
Hi there.
He's an ahead of the curve pioneer.
Oh wow.
He was my first.
Drew. There's Drew. Hi, Drew.
Drew, that's great.
Drew was actually the one who brought us down. Oh, that's crazy. Oh my goodness. Oh, I love it. So Drew was actually the one who brought us down to Orlando. So thank you for that, Drew.
Yeah, Drewius Maximus.
Living
Big
life-
shout out to you, buddy.
Living life in the Sunshine State. So he's asking, are we noticing any trends in the content we're creating now? Well, content in general, we were just kind of talking about this, how, you know, Devin and I, our background is in, you know, rendering content, Cinema 4D, Maya, back in the day, Softimage, you know, all these tools.
Oh my God, I had a roommate that was trying to learn Softimage on his own.
Oh, wow.
And I kind of looked over his shoulder for a little while. This was like back in the early days, you know, back in the mid 90s, early 90s, mid 90s. And I looked over his shoulder. I was like, yep, nope.
Yeah.
Good luck with that, buddy.
Softimage was great, though, actually. Softimage, I got turned on to while I was at Tribeca. And unfortunately, they've discontinued it. But that's what Softimage actually forced me into Cinema 4D. It forced me away from Maya as a program. I felt more comfortable in their GUI and their work environment. I really like their node-based structure outliner and the different ways that you can kind of work predictably. Like, you don't know that something's going to work, but you can apply the same logic to different things and say, oh, I know that if I apply, you know, this cloner in a certain way to this object, then it does this. So then I can assume, and the logic actually pulls through. It's almost bulletproof. Like, you know, as long as your CPU and GPU can handle it, it'll just take whatever you throw at it. Mm-hmm. And that's what I really like about particularly Cinema 4D. But as far as trends go in the content, I mean, it's moving so fast. It's insane.
Notch and Unreal, Unity.
Yeah, so without trying to get like whiplash, you know, I think it's very important to understand that there are differences between pre-meditated, you know, storyboarded, animated, rendered content and stuff that's happening live and dynamically within a video game engine. Mm-hmm. And depending on, you know, what the medium is, there's lots of different ways to approach it, right? So I think really the biggest thing that we've learned over the last couple of years is one of the most important parts of every single project is actually like holding off and taking your time to go through a thorough discovery analysis. Mm-hmm. And define, you know, the outliers and define what the purpose of the content is. Who's the audience? What is, you know, what's the canvas? What medium are we using? Is it projection? Is it LED? What pitch? What resolution? What kind of pixel base? All these different technical details that have to come to the foreground that help you determine what the content will be or how you can achieve that function with content. You know, is my content telling a bunch of low pixel lights to flash up a building in a certain pattern, or is the content doing that in congruency with, you know, other LED screens or however it might be, you know, how is it timed? And, you know, is this living for a permanent installation piece where, you know, it's got to be driven and ready to drive 24/7, you know, and are we building in redundancies, you know, things like that. So taking the hardware side and then applying that knowledge into the content side is very, very helpful. Now, because then once you have defined these different parameters, then you can kind of work backwards and figure out which type of approach to your content is going to really be the best and most efficient way of achieving it.
Yeah, I think there's strengths for both, pre-rendered and real-time rendering. For the Water Street Tampa project in particular, I mean, with all the live data sets that we were dealing with, a lot of custom applications had to be created to make that all jive with our projection mapping system. And the real-time rendering aspect of it, the Unreal Engine, was super helpful in terms of the ability to frame lock all 12 projectors, all 12 cameras, because that had to work, or else it was going to be a blurry mess. And so there are so many strengths there, especially with 360 degrees of projection mapping. This installation in particular, we had to really factor in, shadow casting, like with any installation, but especially with 360 degrees, you're not like pushing this, this table up against a wall, and there's so many things that we had to consider. And the real-time rendering aspect of it made us choose, made it easier to make decisions on the fly.
Yeah.
And that's true for all design processes. And that's what we're seeing in like the real estate development market. Internal sales teams coming together, making decisions on the fly. They're well-informed. They can move forward with confidence rather than trying something and then, oh, that's not working. And, so it's definitely, it increases efficiency, I think, in the design process, that aspect of it.
Absolutely.
I couldn't agree with you anymore. Claire. Hey, Claire.
Hi, Claire.
Asking, did you find working from an RV sustainable? And did you have a remote workflow set up, render farm, etc.?
Yay.
And of course, she says, nice to see you. And
nice to see you too. Yeah. Yeah. So our RV, I would say it's definitely sustainable. It was crazy. Like we thought that we would be up against, a lot of distractions, issues with Wi-Fi, but I mean, it's so crazy that the infrastructure is there everywhere you go, mostly. I mean, obviously, if you're off the grid, it's going to be a little bit more challenging. But, I think, with our workstations, everything ready to go. Yes, we've used render farms. We're actually tapping into the office. We have a render farm here. So that's completely sustainable. And it definitely freed us up to live life. I highly recommend it. If you definitely have the means of, if you're working remotely already and you want to go out there and see, the US and everything it has to offer, I highly recommend it. We learned a lot. And also from like an artistic point of view, we were truly inspired, and it shows in the content that we were creating on the road. We were inspired by nature, all these different landscapes, and the combination of high tech and nature is just such a, inspiring.
It's such a huge contrast as well, right?
Yeah.
Having a lot of this technology kind of backpacking and carrying it around with you on hikes or while you're camping. I know for me, my dad is a huge RVer, and he's been RVing for years and years and years. And I've gone with him on a number of different trips. And it's amazing the availability of technology in the different campgrounds, like what they have to offer. A lot of them have, super high streaming internet services available and, all the main commodities of home. So it's pretty amazing to kind of just get out there, land in a beautiful place, but still have all the conveniences that you typically have at home still at your fingertips.
It's that. And then also, like we mentioned before, when we were on the road, we were visiting job site after job site. We have projects all over the US. So just, being able to do that face to face without having to worry, masks, of course, masks involved, of course. That was so huge in just like building our client relationships and allowing those to evolve through this pandemic. Because that's one thing that, I think is really important, is that face-to-face aspect. And that gave us the ability to do that. And also, the inspiration on the road. That's huge for creativity.
Yeah. And, just to piggyback on that, I mean, obviously we're not, as efficient as we would be sitting in the workstation behind me with 12 monitors hooked up and going, but again, it depends on your workload and what you're doing and what you need to do your job. So a lot of times, like, I'm just as efficient with an animation on my laptop as I am on my workstation computer, depending on what type of animation it is, right? And then when I need the horsepower, we would upload files to our render farm and let the office do its thing while we're driving state to state. And then we get to the next state, check on the render, how we doing? Okay, great. We keep moving. Aside from that, a lot of our business that we operate is just managing email, managing teams, managing finances of projects, and making sure things are ordered and getting delivered and customers are happy. So
Right.
again, a lot of it depends on what you do, whether you could manage that on the road or not. But it's definitely the best way to do it. If you ever have an opportunity, we highly, highly recommend try to just take a summer or a couple months and survive on the road, take your laptop with you and go. It's the best thing.
And there's also something to be said about, being on the road and having that autonomy. You don't have to worry about hotel rooms. You don't have to worry about flights. So it's actually a cost savings for your client, when you really break it down. So there are a lot of benefits.
I think we need to change the conversation, guys, because you guys are giving my wife like an enormous amount of ammunition to go out and buy an RV, and she's been wanting to do it for years. So I think you guys have just kind of concreted the entire decision.
If I could steer it back,
I love it.
well, you won't be sorry when you make that choice. But yeah, I would like to steer back towards like kind of what this last year's impact has been on kind of the movement and direction of our company. Like we said, we started designing lighting and video systems for nightclubs, places where people physically came together, and
live events too,
we designed the Water Street project. Specifically, it's a place where people are supposed to come together into the same place and experience this technology together. And that's definitely been one of the biggest challenges, is when you spend 2 years designing something for 60 people to stand around and experience, and then all of a sudden, now you can't have more than 10 people standing around it. It's definitely something to take into consideration. But we're really hoping that there's been a lot of technology development over the last last year. But it's all been, I feel like it's about like allowing people to connect, but separate at the same time. And I really want to get back to that, using tech to allow us to get back together and connect and come into the same room and enjoy it, the same experience together.
That's true. It's kind of like, that's how I feel about VR. Like there's something about like augmented reality that's more attractive to me. Being in the same space without goggles on and
isolation.
Right.
Yeah.
Being isolated. There's something about being in the same room. And of course, we weren't able to experience that with the pandemic, but going back to that is what we crave. We want to build technology experiences, content that really brings people into the same space. But with the challenge of COVID, that's kind of forced us to be even more creative in the way that we design, for the virtual, and a lot of, you think about all these concerts that are happening, like Tomorrowland, beautiful work.
Extremely impressive.
Right.
Extremely impressive. I absolutely love all the
Great
virtual,
stream,
all the virtual stuff's coming out. It's just mind blowing. And as mind-blowing as it is, it's hard not to wonder, what would that look like if we actually built it in real life again?
Or if you could build it in real life.
Right. That's where the wow factor is the physicality, like being there, being immersed in it. Virtual light's great, but real light is better.
Obviously, it's true. And it's like, whoa, are these live streams that are completely virtual, that are, built in, with real-time rendering, that are just larger than life? Is this setting us up like for, I don't want to say failure, but for like more of a challenge to create that wow factor in real life?
The expectation.
Yeah. Like, are they going to be less impressed in real life now, after experiencing these surreal virtual environments? Like, we're really going to have to step up as an industry, right, to create that same wow factor with real world materials, with, in that physical space.
I think you bring up a really interesting point, to be honest with you, about that whole that whole change between the virtual environments and the physical spaces now. Because I mean, if you really look back in time, especially within the live concert industry, there's been a huge change in evolution of creating a concert more of an experience than even going to see the artists, right?
Right?
huge sets, huge video displays, and they've just been exponentially getting larger and larger and larger to really kind of push those wow factors out to the people that go and watch the shows. So you're right. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what's going to kind of come out of everything with people experiencing these mind-blowing virtual experiences. But I also think that there's a lot to gain from it as well, and projection mapping, to me, I think is more viable today than it ever has been in the past. I think that you can do a lot more with it now with real-time technologies. I think you can have a lot more engaging interactions with projection mapping because you can use it as a huge space that can be, and it can be delivered on very large subjects or objects where
moving out. Oh, that's my favorite.
Yeah, and they can be fully interactive now. I mean, the gaming engines give creators the ability to create completely interactive spaces, and being able to have a lot of people using these, as remotes or whatever, to be able to still interact in a way that brings everybody together as a community, which
it's amazing. And where there's necessity, we'll find a way. And so I think that we're growing these kind of cyborg organic ways of interconnecting the real world and the digital world. And as the technology continues to evolve and things become, half the time I click on something on my computer, it's doing things before I can click. You know what I mean? Like, it's so fast. Like, the processing power is like, am I making this decision, or is the computer just make that decision for me and my hand's on the mouse? Like, what's the deal? But like, and as this continues to grow, our expectation for real-time real-time results, like, I want to see the lighting change now, I want to see, the sun setting now, I want to see what, all these things it's possible. And so
the shadow studies, you
doing shadows and things that used to take weeks, take days, things used to take days, take hours.
Or you'd have to build a physical maquette of what you're projecting onto to do it in real life.
Right.
You don't have to do that anymore.
The structured light auto calibration systems that are out there now, the different tracking and depth sensing tech that's out there and combined in these different 3D environments that really allow, I mean, if you can dream it, it can be done. It's just a matter of how do you construct it, right? But the tech is there, and there's so many tools and widgets and plugins, and it's limitless. So it's a little intimidating for sure, but it's super exciting to see the industry kind of evolve with this new tech. I mean, we just got a PlayStation 5 in the office just to play around with, because
you did?
Yes.
Oh, it's awesome. Yeah, we love it.
I ain't going. I've got to leave. I'm on the way.
I don't know. I can't get him off of it. So.
I'm playing Spider-Man, and I'm zipping through New York at 120 frames a second with full ray tracing going on, and like, it's just nuts. It's like, this is mind blowing.
It is beautiful.
To the childhood Devin is just wouldn't even know.
He never left. The childhood Devin's still here. But I like that you brought up the Slack system, because that kind of points back to, the real-time rendering of, being able to make quick decisions. And so SPP, our client on the Water Street Tampa project, they originally wanted that model to move. Like, we want to just pick it up, bring it out of the room, and then bring it back. And mind you, we have, 2 layers of, truss, 6 projectors each hanging from the ceiling, suspended.
It's 1,500 pounds of very fragile plastic.
Right. So moving this model, which is, it's all modularly constructed with buildings that can be removed and things, because, Tampa is just growing. Like, it's growing at
right now. Yeah, it's growing like
so there's, 5 years worth of development that's already slotted. They know what things are going to look like, but we need to build, to a T and flexible. Right. But the Slack system, so we were like, okay, so you're going to need this. You're going to need this Slack system in order to move the model and to auto calibrate, the projection mapping system. And they're like, whoa, that's too much. the funds there, too much. So, just being able to kind of design a system and show what's possible, but also like bring that back down to earth is so important. And
I mean, that circles right back to the discovery phase, So we spent 3 months going through, and this is how we do every project. We go through all, and everybody dreams up what they wish to see this project become, and then we basically start whittling it down from there from a realistic, budget point of view of like, okay, well, let's boil this down to nuts and bolts. Like how big is the model? How large is it? How large is the space? How many projectors can we fit? And then roughly boil it down to like a rough order of magnitude, right?
Yeah.
And
the pre-visualization tools that we're able to use now to show them, it's like, okay, I know I want that.
We partnered with Immersive on this project in Tampa, and these guys are awesome. If anybody has an opportunity to work with them, do it. They're the best. We kind of worked hand in hand with them once the project was defined after our discovery phase, and we were able to marry basically our audiovisual solution for the projection mapping, which mitigated all the shadows and took care of all of the technicalities of the audiovisual side of things. The audio video flows, how are we handling the signal? Where's the video going? How many 4K rasters are we handling? We're breaking those out over, data path FX4s, or what are we doing? And how are we getting this many projectors to run with the least amount of, very expensive media servers. Yeah, so we did all that, and it turned into an amazing partnership. And you have to work in this case when the projection mapping canvas is so unique and so much detail. We had to work hand in hand with, of course, designing the model digitally and making sure that it matched one for one within a 1 millimeter spec of what's physically there. So that was a huge challenge that we partnered up and were able to work through, because we're projecting cars on a road where there are no cars, right? So in the 3D world, normally if you put goggles on, that would just be a 3D car that was going by. But because that geometry doesn't exist in the real space, if I try to project a 3D car on a road that's there, but a car's not there, from 12 different projectors, you're gonna have 12 different perspectives of that same car all blurred out and not working, right? So that's where you get into the differences between, forced perspective illusion content that's made to render from very specific and be viewed from a very specific point of view, which is limited in a 360-degree model, right?
That would not work.
the tricks will only work from very narrow point of view, versus, texturing the entire 3D model and all of its facets within the UV space, and then having that be tied into the video game, and the UVs of the 3D model are actually what's being controlled.
I like that question that Claire just had.
Yeah, we're just about to jump in there.
You're on it.
To hear your point of view on interactive tech like LiDAR, haptics, and spatial sound. I could definitely talk about this for days, but please feel free.
Well, I just think that, just gesture, especially with the pandemic, and, we're seeing this more and more right now with like touch screens and things like that. They're like, we don't want to touch anything. We need a sanitization station. So like gesture technology, it's so exciting. I think about like the gloves that, that tie into like Ableton. I don't know if you've seen those, but so cool.
Actually, Ginger, who was on the show, is experimenting with a lot of that type of stuff.
Oh, I'll have to check out that episode.
Yeah.
I love that
awesome
stuff. I think it's just so amazing that we can use, we use all of our senses to create these experiences. And I think the spatial sound, especially, is super excited about like creating environments like this that, you feel it, you're connected. And I think it lends well to giving that sense of community. But I feel like, again, it's like you need to be in that space with other people to really get the most out of it. Using those technologies to build this space where people are physically in. I think that's so important. So
yeah, I think the spatial sound element is kind of one of the areas that is most interesting to me in a lot of ways, because visually there's lots of ways to manipulate things and lots of ways to control that. But audio-wise, it's so selective to all of us. We hear things in much different ways to one another. And being able to create those unique kind of experiences that are tailored to individuals within a space I think is really kind of an interesting dynamic and interesting concept, because it really, I find audio in a lot of ways, like it's really intimate to all of us, right?
Intimate, yep. Oh, it's
and being able to create those intimate experiences, engagements through the use of audio has always kind of fascinated me, because it's still something that hasn't been really perfected, and people are still really experimenting with different things, like even wearables or speakers built into pieces of scenery or areas around a venue to give you different feelings or different environments. So the whole spatial audio thing, I think, is kind of something that is still really fascinating. And LiDAR has come an incredible amount of, it's advanced incredibly over the last 5 years. Especially seeing, full-blown real-time LiDAR devices built into the new iPhones, and people starting to tap into what those are capable of compared to commercial LiDAR systems it's just crazy. It's mind-boggling, to be honest. And it's going to be nutty to see what happens over the course of the next few years with these different types of technology and LiDAR.
Yeah, and I think the evolution is really what is combining all of these together into a cohesive experience. It's like visually, yeah, I feel like obviously we're not at the precipice. Everything's evolving visually so fast. All the technology for different visual mediums and different ways that people can see and experience things with their eyes continues to evolve. But like you said, it's that sound that I think is a little bit behind in the technology curve, and now it's starting to catch up, and we're starting to fine tune the tools that allow us to mitigate and determine how a user or someone who's supposed to be experiencing something specific, we can really control that or amplify it or influence it in one way or another. That just amplifies the whole experience that much more.
Yeah, I mean, Berto just saying ray traced audio is becoming a thing now, and that's crazy.
Yeah.
When you really think about it,
I have to look into that. I don't know what that is.
We know ray tracing.
That sounds very interesting. I have to check.
I love it. Yeah. I feel like behind the curve on that.
Yeah.
Well, that's the whole purpose for the show.
That's true.
We need some audio experts to tell us what that is.
Yeah.
Please.
I'm working on that. I'm going to work on that one.
Are you? Maybe we'll have to bring you back like in a few months, and you can give us a full report.
Strictly Ableton and ray traced audio and all that jazz. That 4D sound I'm all about. Yeah, I think it's amazing. And I just miss being in those spaces. Like we said, we come from, hospitality, building nightclubs, and just walking into a club and hearing the sound system. And now like how much control you can have over the space is just so exciting. I think
nightclubs are a really great example, in all honesty. Like that's a great kind of stomping ground to get you to experiment and figure out what works and what doesn't work.
Oh, totally. Because everybody's going to love it no matter what. Like the people who go to nightclubs, which I'm used to all the time, but I feel like it's just such a positive environment, and like that crowd is just ready and willing and with open arms to live that experience. It's a great test space, if you will, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Berto's giving you a link so that you can start to investigate.
I love it. Thank you so much, Berto.
So I didn't want to ignore Drew, because I feel like we've ignored Drew a little bit again, and he was asking, he was wondering, is it content to attract the people to the businesses in the pandemic, or is it things not regarding COVID?
I'm not sure how to. So content to attract people. I mean, yes, I believe that, the more content you put out there and the more exciting the content, yes, you're going to attract people to the business. But I'm confused about that last part. Or is it?
I don't really understand. I'm not going to lie. Drew BS.
Drew, I hope you're still with us.
I love you, buddy.
Yeah, but I'm not sure what that means.
So there's a lot of ways to read that question. So it's like, are you referring to people who are physically like trying to go to brick and mortar stores and like digital signage content? Or are you talking about like maybe advertisements people are seeing on the internet and, streaming services I don't know. We've had, I can speak to the content, we've had a couple clients, and again, all in the hospitality industry. At the beginning of all this, we really had a heavy focus on like social distancing content and feeds of health and safety regulations and things like that. That was kind of just like mundane and playing on digital signage on all the different properties and things like that. But I think we're at the point now where anybody's willing to do anything they can to take their mind off it. So if you can put up some pretty art somewhere that just someone can sit back and enjoy for a while and not think about the world's pandemic going on, then that's the way to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a little bit of an open-ended question, because there's different ways, I think, to interpret it, as you've already mentioned. But if I had to put like 2 cents on there, I'd say it's kind of it's a mix of both. Again, it's kind of a balance of both being able to draw people by the use of content, but also drawing people by the use of necessity and things that people are desiring, or things that people want. They're naturally going to go to those places, whether it's COVID related or not. Whereas, there's been a lot of businesses and a lot of changing that's been taking place, where content has definitely played a really big role in drawing people to different places, or, building up excitement. I think has been a really big challenge during the COVID, to get people really excited about something while they're at home, while they're not going out to experience live events, or, being able to socialize and things like that. And I know for myself personally, like it has to be a pretty big deal to draw us out of the house to go and experience something right now. And it's just as a big deal to even have us commit to a virtual event. Like, there has to be something there that's going to be impactful for us to even do it, because there's just so much out there right now.
Right.
It's saturated.
It's super saturated. So I want to kind of jump back in here just really quick, because we're running out of time. But George, and I hope I got that right. Pardon? Jorge. So my wife is correcting me on the Spanish. So Jorge, what part of the creative pipeline do you see the most amount of need to develop? Is it skills, software, people, or finance?
That's a great question.
I mean, the pipeline is vast, and that's the beautiful thing about it, is you can really hone in on a specific skill set or set of softwares that really tickles your fancy, and you'll have a place somewhere for sure. I think right now, if you're kind of just open-ended asking, I think I find a lot of lack in where the rubber meets the road, right? I feel like there's a lot of people out there who really understand software very well, but don't have a good grip on the hardware side of things, and how how it all is supposed to work in the real world. How do I take something from a virtual idea and turn this into actually working in the real space? What type of hardware do I need? What type of system do I need? What type of infrastructure do we need? How much, that type of knowledge base is always going to be extremely helpful as you approach any project.
A lot of specialists out there, right? And I think I feel like, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, being a specialist that's what you wanted. You did not want to be a generalist. You did not want to have, like a master of none. But I feel like now with so many, outlets, so many creative outlets, so many tools, so many, pieces of software, it's nice to kind of have your toe in each of them, just to see, to have a broad understanding of each of them, to be able to choose, based on the project, based on the needs of the project, right? What's the right avenue? So I think, yes, skills, like obviously developing your skills, so important, but also just being open to kind of exploring, all different tool sets and not necessarily having the pressure of being a specialist at one of them. And I mean, people may disagree with this, but that's in my mind. I feel like you learn the most in that way, because one piece of software may teach you about this other piece. Like there are so many different interconnections between all this creative software, creative content, all the processes. So I feel like that to me is
it's a great point, actually. Like a good rule of thumb is just never be afraid to try something new, software.
No matter how old you are or how long you've been working.
I mean, I'm getting to that point myself. I'm worried about the younger Devin coming up behind me who's learning programs faster than I can learn now. You know what I mean? So you just have to be, on your toes. At the same time, never call whatever your main tool is, this is it, this is my bread and butter for life, because
it moves so fast.
It moves. You add that to your arsenal, continue to use it, but then the way to grow is to continue to expand and try new things, try new techniques, try different. Like for me, it's a combination of some software solutions are perfect for some instances, and some hardware solutions are perfect for some instances, and then every single project's different. You have to find where the two converge, and then do your valued engineering to confirm that the form meets the function, and that you're either designing content for a system that exists and not designing a system for content that you need.
Yeah. Again, I think it really comes back to a balance. And one of the things that I can honestly say that's very unique about DCBolt and some of the other guests and companies that we've had on the show in the past is you guys don't only do content, but you also have a very large knowledge set on the technical side and on the equipment side. And having that balance is being able to have that balance between a technical and creative ability is priceless in so many different ways, because you kind of have to have, my dad always told me this, and I still live by it, is in order to really understand, say, a car really well and how to drive a car and understand everything about the car, you have to know how it's built. And you have to know you might not have to have that absolute or intimate knowledge, but you do have to have an understanding that there's a motor there, and there's wheels, and there's a transmission, and there's a gas tank, and you have to put gas in it to make it move.
And an appreciation for all those parts, right? That's what makes it, I feel like, the appreciation and the respect for all those moving components, because that helps you deal with your team. That helps you in every interaction with your team. You understand where they're coming from, and you're speaking a similar language. You may not know as much as they do in their specialty, but being able to talk intelligently about those different moving pieces makes the engine purr.
It does.
To your point, really, we do specialize. Our niche is where the rubber meets the road. We speak the content language, but we speak the technical language. And because of that, it's put us in a really unique opportunity to where we get to work with a ton of different creative teams. We're not always the one generating the content. And oftentimes, we'll get hired in just to do the technical analysis, and we'll come up with a content template, right?
Projection studies.
And we come up with a template that we can then go to the other creative teams and say, get as nuts as you want, as long as you color within these lines, it's going to be perfect. So people who don't understand the technicalities of what's happening behind the curtain, we're just giving them a canvas and said, be as creative as you want, unlimited. Don't worry about the technicalities of it, and don't let that give you a creative block in any way. Be as creative as you want with this simple canvas, and let us do the thinking on the back end to make sure that that's content's going where it's supposed to be.
Right, and it opens it up also to the fine artists out there, right? Like we have a lot of projects where we develop the projection mapping system, the content templates, and we're kind of bridging the gap between fine arts and classically trained artists and this new age technology, or and as it evolves, so do the artists, so do we.
And once you have that template, you're not limited to shiny shapes in a 3D environment. You can start going back to practical effects and ink drops and cloud tanks and slow-mo footage of different actual practical things, but then apply them within the same template,
which is the vinyl of the visual. I'm going to coin that.
You are full of lines today, Caitlin.
One-liners by Kate.
Branding.
So let's grab one more. Dan, I think you've got a good point there. We'll definitely address some of that, I think, in some of the future episodes coming up, especially probably next week. But I'll try and answer some of that a little bit later on for sure. So I think GSK441 asked, how do you feel the emergence of all of the Instagram experience, sort of experiential spaces all over the country will affect content creation? I think this is a really interesting question. So we'll definitely close things out on this one. But Caitlin or Devin, do you want to take this one away?
We've really seen this evolve over the last couple of years very heavily in our markets and with our customers, particularly across like the hospitality industry, where it seems like the selfie has become a level of measurement of the success of the space.
For better or for worse.
For better or for worse, I'm going to leave my own 2 cents out of this as much as I can. But I do. I mean, it's paid our bills on a few occasions, so I can't smash it, right? But social aggregation has become a huge thing. There's so many different social aggregation platforms out there now that are working to aggregate all your posts live and go through different moderation filters and things like that. And we've been using them, prior to COVID. We had them broadcasted on, live events on the main stage during intermissions. We've done them as giant backdrops at, trade shows and things like that. Mostly so, for branding usage. I think they're cool. There's a lot of really cool video walls out there. And it's not irrelevant content, like as long as it's used properly. I feel like if you're really cool that you want to share, then I'm all about it. But I do think there can be too much. I think sometimes when you go to a physical place,
like a wall crawl where you have all these props, which that's what he's referring to, is this physical space. I think there's going to be a lot. There are going to be so many that pop up, so many more that are outdoor, COVID friendly, pandemic, in the pandemic mindset, basically, but integrating all these technologies. I think we're going to see a lot of virtual. I think we're going to see a lot of real-time rendering within those spaces. And we've been approached about projection mapping, those particular spaces, and having those users, those guests be a part of the experience, talking about mapping even the user or, motion detection and things like that in the physical space. I think it's exciting. But yeah, I mean, there is something about that selfie culture that's it's the inevitable.
If we can move, I don't know if anyone's seen Ted Lasso, but if we could just move to calling it ussies and do pictures of more than one person, if as long as 2 people or more, then I'm okay with it. But I'm done with themselves. I don't care. Personally.
But it's exciting. It makes, it's just another wave of that, as creators, we're going to have to be ahead of the curve and just create these spaces that are shareable. That's the biggest thing with all this.
I think that's kind of the main takeaway, is really the whole shareable experience between all of us, and being able to create those experiences that are completely shareable. I mean, that's almost a mandate right now.
I think and hope that this year really presents the hybrid of what was developed over 2020 with where we were going in 2019. And we kind of tone it back on the isolation use of technology and kind of merge the two into more ways of community and coming together and enjoying these ridiculously amazing pieces of digital art and other art that we can now experience from our living room and experience them together.
Absolutely. Well, both of you, I really want to thank you both for being on the show. It's been a lot of fun. We've covered, I think, a ton of ground in the last almost hour. But we've been posting some different ways to get in touch with you guys. So for those of you who want to get more information, please reach out to Caitlin and Devin at DCBolt.
Thank you guys so much.
And you can also check out their website at DCBolt.com. So I just wanted to introduce our guest for next week. We're going to have Niall Thompson on from Dandelion and Burdock.
Nice.
So we'll be speaking about some of the stuff that they've been working on and some of the processes and projects that they've been doing, which will be really, really cool. And we also are completely voluntary with Ahead of the Curve. We do have a tip jar. So if there's anything that you guys could help kind of keep us moving along and be our hero, you can hit our tip jar at aotc.one/hero. So guys, thank you guys so much again for being on the show with me today. It's been awesome.
You and hi, smart monkeys. How you doing?
Maybe I'll have to grab some of those guys for an episode as well. It would be super fun.
They know their stuff.
Yeah, smart monkey.
They do. Absolutely. Well, thanks everybody, and thanks everybody for watching. And as I say every week, stay ahead of the curve, everyone.
Thank you.
Take
Happy
care.
New Year.
Happy New Year.